morning. Welcome back to Taylor Time Live. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and in the next 30 minutes, you will hear up-to-date top news stories, and we'll be continuing our series on the biggest challenges facing the flooring industry. So you won't want to go anywhere. In case you missed last month's Taylor Time Live, I was joined by Brett Miller with NWFA and Jeff Gordon with Fuse as we talked about supply and demand. So go check it out on our YouTube channel. Now we have an exciting show planned for you today, featuring some great insiders as we talk about the labor shortage. And remember, you can always submit your questions at any time by just texting the number on the screen. Also, the number is in the description down below in the YouTube description, so you'll find it there. But you can text this number right here. For today's insider, I'm joined by Jim Aaron with the Floor Covering Education Foundation. So we're excited for that. But before that, let's turn to our media partner segment, In the News. And this month, I'm joined by Kim Walgren with Wood Floor Business. Kim, we're so excited to have you on the show.
Hey, Seth. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you. And I think this is the first time we've had you on the show. And in fact, I don't believe I've met you in person. So it's great to see you, and I look forward to meeting you. No, I have met you in person. I take that back. I met you at Surfaces
in Las Vegas.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes.
It's been a busy year for sure. Kim,
to say the least.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today. What are some of the top things going on right now in the industry, specifically with wood flooring?
Well, something that's been very much on our minds, of course, for the last 2 years, but then we found ourselves reporting on it again just this week, is the volatility with pricing and supply. And of course, in the last 2 years, we reported a lot on the increases that have been going on with lumber. And they've been very volatile, mostly going up. And they reached a peak in May of 2021. At that point, the NAHB reported that the increase in lumber had added a cost of almost $36,000 to the price of a new home build. So that was, a very substantial number.
Yeah, it's a huge number.
And prices have settled down quite a bit since then. However, now with Russia invading Ukraine, that has created a situation where lumber prices are spiking again, with Russia being the largest supplier of lumber in the world, the largest exporter of lumber in the world. That creates a very difficult situation. And lumber prices have moved up. They're only 15% now below the peak of where they were in May.
Wow.
So that's something to keep watching. What the impact is, here in the construction industry, even potentially down to the wood flooring industry specifically.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, the war happening in Ukraine is terrible. Our hearts, go out to all those there, and have family and friends there for sure. But it is incredible how this ripple effect happens anytime. I mean, we saw it with COVID, so whether it's a pandemic, then of course supply chain, labor issues, people changing jobs or just not wanting to go to work sometimes, or all the craziness that we've seen over the last 2 years. But now, on top of all that, we have this war. So how is that affecting lumber supply, pricing? What are you seeing with that, and what do you expect to come with that?
Yeah, well, of course, what's happening in Ukraine is a horrible, horrible humanitarian crisis. But then, as you said, from a business perspective and with the global economy we're also watching very carefully to see what impacts it has. We all know that the business environment for manufacturers has been very difficult for the last 2 years during the entire pandemic. And dealing, as you said, with labor shortages, with supply issues, with pricing volatility, that's created a very difficult situation, even though demand, of course, for wood flooring manufacturers specifically has been fantastic. So, in fact, we are just crunching the numbers right now on our State of the Industry report that we do every year.
Okay.
And the results we're seeing are that 69% of wood flooring manufacturers told us sales were up in 2021. So That's a great number.
Yeah, that is.
However, in the comments, we got a lot of comments back just about how incredibly stressful it is right now, Seth, for those manufacturers, which is something I'm sure you can relate to as well, dealing with all of those challenges. And so there was even one comment, I thought I would read it verbatim because I thought it sort of summarized the situation. Yeah. The person said there's been, quote, severe emotional stress on management and staff, increased costs, sales are up, but spirits are down. So I think that kind of just expresses the challenging environment right now for manufacturing in general, and specifically for these wood flooring manufacturers.
Wow.
And then
sales are up, but spirits are down, huh? That's that's powerful.
I thought that was an impactful quote.
Yeah.
And then regarding Russia specifically, something we're watching, Seth, is the impact on Baltic Birch Plywood. That is a product that many engineered wood flooring manufacturers use when they build their products. They've got the Baltic Birch base and then whatever hardwood top. And so much of that Baltic Birch plywood comes out of Russia. So that's something we're watching carefully too. And then on top of that, this just in the last week, the FSC announced that they are considering all wood products coming out of Russia to be conflict timber, and they will not certify any products that have any Russian wood in them whatsoever. So that's also a new development just in the last week because of this conflict.
Wow. Yeah, and that's I mean, that's a huge change because then, so what you're telling me is not only is that supply of lumber from Russia affecting subfloors, but it's also affecting engineered hardwood as well, which, for a few weeks, that's not too crazy. But if this continues and if we continue seeing sanctions and things like that going, that can put us in an interesting situation for sure. In the flooring world,
and especially on top of that, then the wood flooring manufacturers who use any of those products that are, in the FSC supply chain will no longer be able to have that certification. And that could have a big impact, particularly FSC is a huge certification in the commercial market where companies, construction is going for LEED certification. So there's impacts there too.
So is there any news on this as far as like what the expectation is? I mean, obviously I know you can't predict what's going to happen with the war, but is this a temporary, or do you see this being like for the duration of this conflict?
I would expect that it would be for the duration, although I don't have my crystal ball right now. So
sure.
It's just a difficult situation, and we're, interviewing manufacturers day by day to try to find out what is happening, what they're experiencing day by day.
So how do you see that affecting flooring contractors? We talked a little bit about manufacturers, but how do you see all of this impacting the flooring contractor?
Yeah, the contractors, in general, of course, during the pandemic, the contractors have been experiencing fantastic demand, but they've also had some complications with shortages in the State of the Industry report, again, that we're just crunching the numbers now. 86% of them told us that they are having product shortages, so that's something they have to deal with. The top product that they cited for shortages was wood flooring, and then the second product was adhesives. And again, I don't have to tell you how challenging it's been for adhesive manufacturers to source raw materials during this time.
Yes, it has.
And then the third product, to say the least.
Yeah, we feel that pain.
Yeah, and then it's ongoing pain, it seems, unfortunately. And then finish was the third product that they cited as the one that they most commonly had a shortage of. So that's difficult. But then also, I think it's difficult for them to navigate the crazy volatility that has been happening with wood flooring prices, because we're hearing some distributors are guaranteeing their wood flooring price for only 48 hours, some of them only 24 hours. So wood flooring contractors are bidding jobs, and they're needing to be very, very decisive about how long is their estimate valid for, because their costs are in some cases going up day by day. And they're needing to communicate with their customers, very clearly that this estimate is only good for X number of days. And, you don't want to blindside your customers, come back to them. In fact, there was a discussion I just saw in the last week on Facebook where a contractor said he had bid a job last fall. Of course, business has been so good, he's only doing the job right now. But he said since then, the price of his wood has actually doubled.
Wow.
So that was a difficult conversation he was having to have with his customer as far as, is she going to absorb those costs? Is he going to absorb some of that cost?
Yeah.
It's just something you really have to plan ahead for. So
crazy.
In fact, in that discussion, there was one pro, he said, I haven't seen price increases and unavailable materials like this since I went into business in 1989. He said, crazy times.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true.
Indeed. Yep. We all know they are crazy times, and it's not getting less crazy right now.
That's very true, unfortunately. So Kim, before I let you leave us here, do you have any good news for us to kind of end the news section today?
Absolutely, Seth. Remodeling is still super strong. Construction is still going well. There is still incredible demand for our products. So it's just a matter of figuring out how to meet that demand.
Good. Okay. Well, that we can handle. We like to end on a high note when we can. So thank you so much. But Kim,
absolutely, Seth.
Yeah, it's been great to have you. Really appreciate your time today. And we'll talk to you soon. Now let's go ahead and transition.
Thanks so much, Seth.
You're very welcome. Let's go ahead and transition to our main topic today, the labor shortage causes and solutions. And let me introduce, if I could speak, our guest insider for today's topic. Remember, though, if you do have any questions during the show, you can just text the number on the screen. And first up, let's meet Jim Aaron with the Floor Covering Education Foundation. Jim, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, Seth. I'm really excited to be with you guys, so thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, we're excited to have you as well. And this is a topic that we've talked about actually about a year ago on our show here, as well as obviously, is a topic of conversation all the time in the industry. And for you, I think it's a topic of conversation daily, right? So first, can you tell us a little bit about FCEF and why it was created?
Yeah, it is a topic of conversation daily and all day long. So at least for the last year for me, right? So I've been in my current role for just over a year. I left working with CCA Global for about 17 years to become the executive director of the Floor Covering Education Foundation around February, March of last year. So let's talk about how and why the Floor Covering Education Foundation was created. It was actually birthed out of, ideas from board members of the World Floor Covering Association. Specifically, I'll give credit to Don Roberts and Deb DeGraff. Their idea was, hey, listen, if the World Floor Covering Association really exists to help independent mom and pop retailers, let's put our money where our mouth is, and let's try to do something about this installation crisis. Well, if you take a look all the way back to, to 2018, when the Floor Covering Leadership Council commissioned the Blackstone Group out of New York to do an exhaustive study on this topic. The Blackstone Group came back after studying this issue for 6 to 9 months, and many of your viewers are already familiar with this study. And for those of you who are not, I would just tell you that it came back and said, yes, you have an issue, which we already knew. But the great thing about this study is that it quantified the issue, right? And in order to solve something, you've really got to quantify it. You've really got to define it as a starting point, right? In order to find out what the solutions are. Basically, they came back and said the flooring industry is losing between 5,000 and 6,000 flooring installers every year. They said it's been happening for a while and that it will continue to happen unless there is a concerted industry effort to stem the tide and to change it, right?
Jim,
it's not that...
Sorry to interrupt, but you said 5,000 to 6,000 a year?
That's exactly right. That's the study. And again, by the way, anybody who wants a copy of this study would be glad to share it. We believe that it belongs to the industry. It was paid for by industry executives, but it's very interesting. But yes, to define that again, Seth, what it basically means is that's a net number.
Yeah.
In other words, if 15,000 are leaving, only 10,000 are getting in every year, right?
Wow.
So every year the pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So, again, the Floor Covering Education Foundation was put together to be the lead organization to champion the cause of finding solutions and stemming this tide. And so loosely stated, I'll tell you our mission objectives are, number one, to increase the awareness of flooring installation as a career pathway. Number two, improve the perception of flooring installation as a career pathway. Number three, recruit individuals that are interested. Once we find those individuals that are interested, that raise their hand and say, okay, this is something I want to do, where do I go next? We then connect them with our industry training partners. And again, we've partnered with CFI, NWFA, and CTEF, which is the training arm of the National Tile Contractors Association. Our scholarships go to those 3 training organizations. By the way, all 3 of those training organizations are represented well on our board of directors. So we scholarship half of the tuition of entry-level and intermediate classes offered by those 3 training entities. And I would say the last part of it, which is honestly probably the easiest, is to connect those individuals to employers, right? Whether they be contractors or individual retailers.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a great mission. Yeah, that's a great mission. You guys do a lot, clearly. So I think, and you've been there, Jim, just right at about a year. Is that right?
Yeah, just a little over a year. I would tell you, when I came on board, I guess it was around the beginning of March. So we're looking at just over a year now.
Yeah.
And while listen, you may remember back in December 2019, there was a big announcement. It was done in Chattanooga. All the press was there. Don Roberts, Scott Humphreys, and many others had a big announcement about the fact that this foundation had been formed, and here was the mission. Well, they were starting to look for an executive director to run the foundation. And then, of course, as we've said a million times, then COVID hit, right?
Yep.
So they put everything on the back burner until the end of, I guess, 2020, when they started the search again for executive director. I accepted the position in March. And so, yeah, just a little over a year. And while Steve Abernathy served as a interim director, there was look, he had his own job as CFO of the World Floor Covering Association.
Right.
So in many ways, Kay and myself, we had a lot of work to do initially to build the foundation of a foundation, right?
Yeah.
We didn't really have a marketing partner. We didn't have a website. We were still waiting on our 501c3 status. But, so look, for the first several months, we kind of laid a foundation, and then we got to work. And I'm proud of some of the things we've done, but we've got a very, very, very long way to go.
Yeah. Well, Jim, congratulations on your first year there with the FCEF. And I just have to ask you, during your first year, what has been your main focus? I know the FCEF, as you said, kind of does a lot of things, but what's been your main focus?
It's interesting because a lot of it is still getting the word out about who we are and what we do. There are a lot of retailers that don't know we exist. Of course, we've been to virtually every trade show that has happened in the last year. You name it, we've been there, and we've raised a lot of awareness, and we've talked a lot about the issues. Of course, we are a foundation, and the money that we spend to create the awareness and also to scholarship students into the training requires financial donations. And so we've been active in talking to people, whether they be individual retailers or distributors or large suppliers and manufacturers, about donating and supporting financially this very important foundation, which really is, again, tackling what we believe is the industry's biggest issue. So a lot of, there's been a lot of things we've been trying to work on. And I would just remind everyone that right now it's myself and Kay Whitener, who is just phenomenal. She's our director of operations. And just a few months ago, we hired an administrative assistant. So in many ways, we have a very, very lean staff. Trying to tackle actually not one of the industry's biggest issues, the industry's biggest issue. Good news, I will say, is that we have a very active board of directors. If you take a look at our board, it's pretty much a who's who of the industry, and they've been very active and very willing to step in and help us when we needed help.
That's awesome. Yeah, having a good board can make a huge difference, and it sounds like you guys operate lean and mean, but that means that the impact of donations is even greater to the end result, which is cool. So what are some of the unexpected challenges that you've had to face in this role?
It's interesting. Challenges. I would say let me approach that a little bit differently. I'll touch the challenges, but let me hit unexpected. That word unexpected.
Okay.
Here's what really surprised me is how unaware people are about this career path. And that is something that we've got to all get our head around. You understand that individuals cannot choose the career path of flooring installation if they don't first consider it. And they can't consider it if they're not aware of it. And I'm telling you, after a year, I would tell you that is probably our biggest issue. People, I don't know why, but I guess people just think flooring just magically appears on the floor when a house is built.
Yeah.
I tell you this quick story. I was speaking to a group of kids down in just outside of College Station, Texas, in Bryan, Texas, back in, I guess it was March or April of last year, and had 35 or 40 kids in the room. All of these kids were on the construction path in high school. They had determined they were not going to a four-year university. They were going into a trade and construction-related trade. So I'm asking the guys, okay, great, guys and gals, by the way, 35 or 40 of them in the room. How many of you are going into flooring installation? Of course, not a single hand was raised.
No hands, yeah.
How many of you even considered it? How many of you even thought about it? Again, not one single hand was raised. Seth, they mentioned every other part of the house. I'm telling you, everything from framing to roofing to plumbing to electrical. Nobody mentioned flooring, not once. I kept asking them, well, why haven't you thought about it? You know what they said? Nobody ever talks about that.
Yeah.
We haven't considered it because nobody ever talks about it. I kid you not, and I'm not joking. There was a kid on the front row that raised his hand and he goes, that's a thing? And I yeah, that's a thing.
Well, look down. Look down. It's a thing.
It's a very, very lucrative thing. So I would tell you, we all share in that responsibility, and I guess in that blame, and in that responsibility to change it. Look, we can do a lot on the national level. The Floor Covering Education Foundation can, and I think we have. I think if you take a look at some of the things we've done on our website, by the way, I'm very proud of what we've done on our website. By the way, let me give this plug. We started out with one website, fcef.org, Floor Covering Education Foundation, fcef.org. We soon realized that we had all of the information targeting the industry as well as targeting recruits all in that one website. So what we did was we divided it out. We said, okay, we need to have one website that talks to the industry, distributors, retailers, manufacturers. We need to have one website that speaks specifically to recruits. So we developed that additional website. That website, and I encourage everybody to go take a look at this, is flooryourfuture.com. Again, fcef.org is the industry-facing site. The recruit-facing site is flooryourfuture.com. Okay. So I would encourage you to share that website, share a lot of our social media. But again, there's a lot of things we can do nationally, but I would tell you, there is absolutely, and I believe this with all of my heart, there is absolutely no scenario where this installation crisis is solved that doesn't involve involvement at the local retail level.
Yeah.
Contractors, retailers, installers themselves have got to start taking the responsibility and doing something about it locally. You know, I follow a number of installation groups on social media, Facebook, for example, and I've been following this one guy, and I know I'm going to mess up his name, Jon Steier, S-T-E-I-E-R.
Okay.
He's had some posts recently where he's actually gone into local high schools and worked with the shop teacher and introduced flooring installation for an entire week. I think that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole idea is not to, we know that those guys aren't going to get certified and be phenomenal installers after 1 week in a high school, but you know what it does? It creates awareness. It starts there. And I would tell you, man, imagine where we would be if every retailer across the country would contact their local high school and say, hey, do you have a CTE program? Are you one of the local districts that are starting to bring back shop class? Because, by the way, there's a lot of them that are bringing back shop class. And if they are, why can't we get 1 week of flooring installation in there to create some awareness? I think that's critically important if we're going to make some short-term and long-term differences in this issue.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at it. You gotta start them off, learning about it, and like you said, awareness will lead to increased labor force as well. So, Jim, tell me about some of the biggest wins, or maybe let's pick one of the biggest wins that you've had in the last year.
Thank you. And I've got one specifically, and I think a lot of your viewers probably have already heard about this, but listen, we're going to talk about it anyway. It's really exciting. And I would tell you, it goes to this. I believe, and I believed early on, that part of the issue, you step back and think, why do we have this issue? Well, look, there's no one reason. There are a lot of reasons. I mean, the list is really long about why we don't have enough installers. It's really long. But one of them is that floor covering installation has been completely absent in technical colleges and community colleges across the U.S. It just has. You may find one or two, but it's somebody, like I mentioned earlier, where somebody's going in on their own and doing something in conjunction with the school. But a formalized training program, it has not existed. But yet, all of those other trades that we compete with for talent, they're present there. Electricians, plumbers, carpentry, you name it. They're all present in the technical colleges and community colleges. And so again, remember, we're competing against those guys for talent. So I thought, okay, we've got to have some program here. And working with the Technical College System of Georgia at the state level, and also with our training partners, CFI, NWFA, and CTEF, we were able to put together this 10-week introductory floor covering installation class. And the pilot program is actually wrapping up this week. They are this week, the week of March 14th. We are in week 10 of a 10-week flooring introductory program. It's the first time this has ever been done that I'm certainly aware of in the U.S. The second cohort of classes, by the way, begins in May. If anybody wants to send somebody to that, I will tell your viewers that only about 4 or 5 of the 8 students in the current class are local to Dalton. We actually have retailers that are sending, I'm not kidding, there's a guy from Cincinnati who is living in Dalton with family for 10 weeks so he can go to this class.
Wow.
There's a retailer in Kentucky that has paid for one of his helpers to live in a hotel for 10 weeks so he can go to that class. So by the way, it's open, registration's open now. We're taking applications for that class that starts in May. And again, with our scholarships, it's no charge. It's basically no charge for this class. You just have to commit to the 10 weeks. But here's the thing. We've already submitted this class for accreditation. And once we get accreditation approval, the doors are going to open wide open. And it's no stopping us at that point. Word has gotten out about what we've done and what we've been able to do here. And we've had retailers all over the country raise their hand and say, how do I get involved? How do I take that program and bring it to my local technical and community college? And Jim, I will tell you, if you're watching this video here and you have the same questions, please reach out to me and we want to help you do that. Again, just remember, we have a very lean staff. It's myself and Kay and Tiffany. And so if you're one of those guys that want it implemented in your local technical college, we're going to ask you to do some of the heavy lifting in your local community. But imagine the byproduct and return on investment that you're going to have for years and decades to come if we can get this running.
Yep, and that's exciting. So Jim, I'm going to give you 30 seconds for this last question because we're running out of time. So I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off after that. But last question for those watching, what can they do to get involved and help, or I think as you guys call it, step up?
Yeah, listen, a couple of things real quick. I would tell you, number one, we don't exist and we can't do the things we need to do without financial help. And again, we exist to help you. So I encourage you to go to our website, fcef.org, go to the donate page and commit to making a recurring donation. That's number one. Number two, share our message. Follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, and share our message everywhere on your business social media sites as well as your personal social media sites. Thirdly, if you want to bring local training to you, whether it's a 2-week or 5-week training right in your community or even in your warehouse that we can scholarship, reach out to us. We'll help put you in contact with the training organizations that we partner with. And lastly, if you're really interested in this whole technical college program, reach out to myself or Kay Whitener, and we'll talk to you about some steps we need to take to implement it in your local community.
Very good. So there's exciting news. There's a problem, but we have a solution I say we, the FCEF has a solution, the industry has a solution. So don't forget to turn to it. Check out fcef.org and flooryourfuture.com. Is that correct?
.com, yes.
Okay, very good.
That's
so check
correct.
those out. And Jim, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
For sure. That's all the time we have for today. I just want to say a special thank you to our incredible insiders as well as to Wood Floor Business for being on the show with us. If you haven't already, I invite you to go visit our website. You can download our free mobile app, follow us on social media, you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, and don't forget to tune in every third Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for Taylor Time Live. On a different note, before we end today, I do want to just take a moment to remember a dear colleague and friend, Ted Egan. As many of you already know, Ted passed away last week. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, his services today. Ted was super well known and respected in the industry, and he spent 17 years with us here at Taylor, and in that time was able to make a huge difference both professionally and personally to many of us in the company. So Ted, you'll be missed. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and remember, at Taylor Adhesives, we're with you every step.